Guys, you know I'm a fan of the old school YouTube. You know, where a dude just sits in his car and chats to you. People say, why do you use your car, Tim? Why are you in your car? Because I'm driving around, I'm thinking about stuff. I pull over and I just speak to you about it. That's what YouTube should be about, all right? It's gone all commercialised, isn't it? I think every 4 minutes there's some adverts. Get YouTube Premium. Look, we're going to talk about RAF Brize Norton and the pro-Palestinian protesters. Say that 17 times quickly. You know what I'm talking about. Breaking in and spraying one of the A330s, one of the tankers, all right, one of the air tankers, aircraft there, called Voyager is what they are. I've actually written a statistic down here before I got in the car this morning because it's a really important one. I think this stems back to 2021. We're going to talk about the feminization of the military. We're going to talk about the feminist matriarchy that we are living under, not only in the military, mate. We're also going to talk about the government as well, you know what I'm saying? So we're going to keep it calm because we're chilled out. We're not ranting today. And in fact, I just got round, I've just come back from Ireland. I've been on a motorbikeling tour solo. So I'm absolutely shattered. So I may say things today that are a bit uncomfortable. Don't hit me for it, mate. You know what I mean? Just chill out. Right, let's talk about that stat then. This goes back to 2021. So the thing about RAF Brize Norton, what's happened is some pro-Palestinian protesters, called, I think from Action Palestine or Palestine Action, have broken in the Brize Norton and they've sprayed one of these aircraft. I think two of these aircraft got sprayed with red paint. Now that paint, of course, luckily it was paint. And people are saying that. They're saying, oh, Tim, it doesn't matter, it's just paint. I'm like, you do not understand what now has to happen to those aircraft. The level of engineering that has to happen to them. They could have thrown nails down the engine, you don't know, right? It says what's called a strategic asset. A tanker is what someone like myself would have to have sacrificed themselves for to protect in war. So if I'm defending myself, I was a bomber pilot, slightly different. If I was a fighter guy and someone was coming at the tanker, I'd have to literally sacrifice myself to protect that tanker. That's how important these things are. Now, we've got 14 under a deal with Air Tanker. I don't want to get into details. It's a PFI, which I hate, private financial initiative or something. They always mess up. And the Air Force has got 9 at any one time. I think the 9th one is always going to the South Atlantic as the air bridge for the Falklands. This is just from memory, guys. 8 are then used in the tanking role around the Air Force. Maybe the tanking transport role, I can't remember. And then there's 5 that Air Tanker used for other things like leasing out to airlines and stuff. And then the Air Force, I think it has the option to get all of them back in time of conflict. Yeah, it's probably a good deal. I don't know nothing about it. Doesn't matter. I'm not a tanker guy, I was a jet guy. So what's happened then is they've broken in, they've sprayed these jets. They've literally just got over the fence at Brize Norton and they've gone up in electric scooters. So that's pretty good for the green initiative the Air Force is pushing, isn't it? And they sprayed all these aircraft. It's a horrific breach of security. I can't begin to tell you how this looks for the rest of the world when they see the Royal Air Force can't even protect one of its main operating bases. Now, let's talk about who's in charge of this operating base, because you know how I feel about this kind of stuff. And I'm not going against this woman, who's a woman, of course it is. I'm not going against this woman. And people will say, Tim, you're a misogynist. You're like talking about, oh, she's a woman. Look, the reason I'm saying this, okay, is because I know how women are treated within the military. If you're a disabled, I don't know, one-eyed lesbian, you're going to get ahead. You know what I mean? It's that kind of grift in the military right now. This woman has an MBE, an OBE, called Louise Henton, I believe, group captain, and she comes from the world of HR. And as I wrote down this morning, someone actually said in one of the posts, HR jobs just provide daycare for women. And actually, that's quite an interesting one, because when women came into the workforce back in the 60s and 70s, all that kind of stuff, en masse, we want equality, hashtag equality. They all came in, didn't they? They weren't twice the number of jobs to accommodate women. What it was something to break up the nuclear family, wasn't it? It was to break up the happy home. And now what's happening, of course, we have to import immigrants, of course, to make up the shortfall because you're not having kids. Why? Because women are in the work. It's not women's fault that they're in work, of course. I'm not saying that at all. But you know how it is. Like, we don't have women in the house looking after and growing the family. That's what women are great at, was the empathy, was the nurturing, the acceptance, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff that men maybe aren't that great at. And the problem is when you see that in the workforce, it doesn't work, especially in the military is what I mean. In the military, it doesn't work. I don't care what anyone says, mate. I don't care what anyone says. I don't think women should be in frontline fighting roles. And this woman's not technically in a frontline fighting role. She's a base commander of RAF Brize Norton. Apparently she's very good. I've spoken to some dudes that are in. But it's not the women I'm having an issue with when I say about this feminized matriarchy. I haven't really got an issue with the women. I flew with loads of women. I don't really care about women in the military like a lot of people do here. What I care about is the men that have become feminized. So yeah, call me a misogynist, racist, transphobe, all these words, you know, I don't care. I'll say, if you call me racist, I'm like, yeah, I'm a racist. What are you can do about it? I'm not a racist, by the way. But if you call me racist, if you're that if your brain this is like, Tim's a racist, I'm like, yeah, I am. What are you can do about it? Come and see me, mate. Come and stand toe to toe. Call me racist to my face. Doesn't matter. I'm not a violent man. Well, not all the time anyway. So Serco have said it wasn't their responsibility, and it wasn't. They don't actually do that. Everyone's saying it's Serco's responsibility. It's not. They don't do that part of the base. And also, not only is Louise the station commander, there's actually someone called the Commander Air Wing, a chap called Andy McIntyre. Now, he's responsible for the air operations side. So Brize is so big, they've divided those responsibilities. Now, what Andy does, I'm sure he's a top guy, he does all the aircraft planning, all that kind of operational side. And then what Louise does is she looks after all the administration side. Now, from what I can tell, Louise's responsibility is the base security. Now, that base security generally is divided up into 4 parts. This has come from memory from when I was in. So you've got the RAF police and the MOD police if you need them. The RAF police tend to do access control and everything else. Then you'll have the Military Profits Guard Service, MPGS, which are made up of ex-Army, Royal Navy, ex-Royal Air Force people that they do a lot of guarding. And then you also have the Royal Air Force Regiment, 2 Squadron. There's also a Royal Air Force Auxiliary Police Squadron there. I think they're reservists. I don't know. 2 Squadron is... their motto is something like never unprepared. I mean, you want to change that pretty quickly. So the RF Regiment, they do have security responsibilities. Now, someone was saying that that wasn't their role from the last 6 months or something. I don't understand that. Someone, if you know in the comments, whack it down here. I'm not really looking for who was responsible. It doesn't really matter whether there was a failure on one independent unit. What it matters, whether Louise had elevated this risk, and I'm sure she had, the risk that she cannot secure her perimeter, which is like 8 miles long, sufficiently. She should have elevated it up to the next up the chain. Now there's a duty holder system I don't want to go into, but all she's got to say is I can't properly secure my base, I need to elevate it up. The next guy up, the group commander, she's a group captain, don't get these things confused, there's someone bigger than her, he looks after lots of stations, or she and they will then go, oh, can I provide security? No, I can't, it's not my budget. I'll elevate it to what's called the SDH, senior duty holder, and that is Chief Air Staff. That Chief Air Staff is a guy called Richard Knighton, who was the deputy of a guy called Mike Wigston. Mike Wigston was the guy, that's the stat you want right now, back in 2021. Mike Wigston was my boss. He actually got me into the Air Force from the Navy, and I like the guy. He doesn't like me very much. My wife saw him at a train station and went and said hello. I don't think the guy likes either of us, which is a real shame, actually. It is and it isn't. I don't think we should tolerate the behaviour that Mike brought into the service, but irrespective, I always found him a really good boss. And I think we've got to be honest with people. People say to me, no, he's rubbish, mate. No, he wasn't, mate. He was a really good boss at the end. I flew on his wing. He kept me safe. Just because I didn't like what he did with diversity in the military. But he was put there for a reason. So Mike said back in 2021 that he wanted to recruit 40% women and 20% minorities by 2030. That 40, 20, 30 figure is an easy one to remember. I've written it down, so I've got some other stuff for you as well. Now, I remember at the time going, hang on. You're trying to recruit 40% women, 20% minorities. Why, mate? For one. And I'll do another video on this, by the way, where I bring in all the memes and everything else and all that stuff. Because I want to talk about a guy who's a guy called Bob who's attacked me recently, and it's a shame. I want to talk about that guy. I want to talk about the feminism, the masculine feminism, if that is possible, in the military. Like the weakness of men in the military at the moment. Like how on earth has the British military allowed itself to get... The only people holding out on this right now, guys, the only people are the Royal Marines. It's getting hot in this car, I tell you right now. So Mike wanted to bring in 40% women, 20% minorities by 2030. I asked why. There's no reason, is there? Because that's the reason. There's no other reason for it. We haven't got 20% minorities in the country today. Wait a couple of weeks, you know what I'm talking about. And if it's 40% women, why not bring in 50% women? What's wrong with that? You know what I mean? That's the thing, isn't it? Right. Okay, so what's the other thing then? So we're looking at, remember Brize Norton was the place that Clara Grady, when she was station commander, put a rainbow crossing in. Do you remember that? A rainbow crossing. It was the only rainbow crossing, by the way, in the whole of Europe on any base ever. And she put one in. And then they tried to hide it. When I said, oh, this is for DI, they went, oh, no, it's not for DI. No, it's nothing to do with that. It's outside the kids' nursery. Except on the very front page of Brize Norton's station's website, it actually said, this is about diversity and equity and inclusivity. That's what it said on the very front page, because I had a look at it, you know what I'm saying? Now, don't forget, you've got Station Commander and you've got Commander Air Wing. I've talked about that. They do slightly different things. The problem with women in the military, and this is what I'm talking about right now, is this empathy. It's almost like a suicidal empathy. What they do is they wrap themselves up in compassion. It doesn't work in the military, mate. It doesn't work in the military. That is the issue. It doesn't work. You need standards in the military. I've talked about it all the time. You need someone there to say that is not acceptable. What is it in A Few Good Men, where Jack Nicholson said, you know, you need someone to stand on that wall. You're not going to like that person, by the way, but that's what's got to happen. I'm not getting myself all ranty here. The thing is that we've just gone, this is the problem with the government. We're just gone and prescribed Palestine Action now. We said, you can't be in the group now. You're a terrorist group. You can't be in it anymore. So tomorrow they're going to come back as Action for Palestine or some shit like that, aren't they? You know how it's going to work out. You know, that's what they're going to be doing. It doesn't make sense. We wait for someone to spray like corrosive paint down the engine of strategic assets that we have in the Air Force. Like, you wait for it and then you go and do something about it. We should be doing something about it beforehand. You know what I'm saying? It's not how our government works. Now, remember, John Healey, our Defence Secretary, recently admitted that Britain has lost control of the borders. Do you remember that? Because he said that, didn't he? And obviously, we can't even protect an airbase, mate. I don't want to be that guy that is being all sensationalist, because I'm not about that. I like the facts. I like to look at the facts. Is it Louise's responsibility? Was it Andy McIntyre's responsibility? Is it their responsibility at all? Is it responsibility of the Air Force? Are we accepting the fact that now we've just demonstrated to the world that you could walk over a wall and just run on and just spray paint an aircraft? You could have drilled holes in an aircraft. Imagine how long that, just drill little holes all over the place. How long? Like every panel, just drill a hole. How long would that take to find all those holes, to rectify that? You may have gone through wires inside. You'd have to strip that aircraft apart, throw nails down it, drill holes in the tires, set light to it, throw petrol over it, set light to it. Strategic asset gone, worth millions, but more, probably like billions in the terms of what we cannot now support around the world. This is, and they can't find these people. The only reason they knew they did it was because someone went up to the airplane and went, someone sprayed red paint at it. And these people have put something on the internet, mate. Have a look at it. They didn't know. The Air Force had no way of knowing. They're never going to catch these people. I doubt they'll catch them, actually. I doubt they'll catch them. Starmer called it vandalism. Starmer is part of this. Remember, Starmer part of Fabian society. He's a communist. He is. We know this. He should not be in this. And Wallace, of course, Ben Wallace. This is the problem. Ben Wallace was trying to get 30 in by 30, wasn't he? 30% women into the military by 2030. When I said to Ben Wallace on Twitter a couple months ago now, he said, oh, Tim, you can't expect us to sit around making policy for the military. I do, mate. You're Secretary of State for Defence. That's exactly what I expect you to be doing. 30 by 30. I said to him, why? Why do you want 30% of the military to be women by 2030? It's nonsensical. Have you noticed, by the way, in America, when I do this next video later on today, when I do this next video, you'll see women talking about, oh, we're going to go to war with Iran. Yeah, toxic masculinity. We kind of like that now. You know what I'm saying? That's all right now. You know, what's the first thing that happens when women deployed on an aircraft carrier in the United States Navy goes to sea? Go and have a look at how many become pregnant before they go. Look at how many become pregnant on that carrier. If we're talking about operational efficacy, I'm telling you, you wouldn't, if you had to say what's the most effective fighting force in the military ever, what proportion of it would be women? You say 0. Now, the Marines have worked this out. That's why the Marines are not having women in them. The seniors in the Marines, this feminized senior military Royal Marine officer that I spoke to the other day when I was in my gym, this is the problem, the feminized. He was saying, we need women in the military. We need women in the Marines. And then I know, because I spoke to all the sergeants and stuff in the training teams, never happen, mate, never happen. So that's basically it, mate. That's my take on it. I'm going to do a video later for you. I thought I'd get this out. Well, let me know what you think in the comments, guys. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't surprise me at all. And I'm not blaming anyone. I'm blaming the state of this country. And I've just toured a bike around Ireland for a week. I could not tell you how lovely that country is. All Southern Ireland, you know, Killarney, Kilkenny, Wicklow, all those kind of places down south. What lovely people, and how they invest in their children. I don't know whether you noticed that, if you've ever been over there. The community vibe is just real. Chat to loads of them. We haven't got that here. We don't have that in England. Let me know what you think about that. All right, guys, take care.